Welcome to our video presentation sponsored by the Jesuit Retreat Center of Los Altos. My name is Kevin Leidich and I'm one of the pastoral ministers here at El Retiro. How does a Christian and Christian community respond to troubled times? Whether those troubled times might be personal or affecting the wider society as we are now facing in this global pandemic. Jesus gives us a 7-point strategy in the Last Supper account in the Gospel of St. John, chapters 13 to 17. In my previous webcasts, I presented the first 6 strategies that Jesus has given us when facing troubled times. First, allow Jesus to work for us, that is, to labor for us, to minister to us. Second, follow the example of Jesus and seek to serve others. Third, live in the Spirit, dwelling within us. Fourth, identify the work and tactics of the evil one. Fifth, I live strengthened by the knowledge and experience of being chosen and sent by Jesus. And sixth, strengthened by the fact that we're called to form community and be encouraged by community to deepen our union with God through the experience of community. This presentation describes the final strategy of the program given to us by Jesus. We are called to be in union with God through prayer. John chapter 17 contains a high priestly prayer of Jesus. Some samples of his rich images are these. In verse 1, when Jesus had said this, he raised his eyes to heaven and said, "Father, the hour has come." In verse 9, I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but the ones that you gave me, because they are yours. In verse 20, I pray not only for them, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. A couple years ago, a gentleman came to our retreat center to make a silent directed retreat. He has made weekend preach retreats given to large groups. However, he had never made individually directed private retreats where he meets personally with a director once a day for spiritual conversation. This gentleman was getting ready to step back from his business a bit, take stock of his life and faith, and so he was encouraged to make an individually directed retreat. He was very typical of some retreatants who come to us from that age group. The kids are out of the house, retirement is on the horizon, the person is healthy. He does not need additional income, but what do I do with the remainder of my life? He was a very warm and welcoming gentleman. There was an easy way about him. After some preliminary conversation after dinner the first day, I thought to myself, let's get down to the business of the retreat. So I casually asked him, how do you usually pray? He responded very intently and seriously, religion is a very personal thing. And I thought to myself, this could be a very long 8 days. And what do you expect to do on a retreat and discuss with the director? He subsequently made a very good retreat, very fruitful. He read a lot of what I suggested, and we had an hour discussion each day about what he read. I mentioned various ways of praying, and I'm sure they privately used them, but he never touched upon what really happened in his prayer. Reflecting upon that experience, I'm struck that we are called to be witnesses to our faith, and a primary way to witness is by sharing with others how we encounter the Lord in prayer, and also to lead others in prayer. Of course, we do this with discretion and with gentleness, as Jesus gently handled the Samaritan woman in John 4. In our administration offices at the retreat center, there's a one-frame cartoon of a man riding a crowded subway with empty seats around him. There's empty seats around him because he is wearing a sweatshirt, a shirt which says, "Ask me about my religion." Now, I'm not sure this strategy would work on an airplane. You and I are called to witness to our faith in a manner that is effective, natural, and promises to bear fruit. As Jesus is a person of prayer, We are also called to be in union with the Father through our prayer, and to continue to return to prayer. And this is a very important strategy when we encounter troubled times. Coming from Ignatian spirituality, I find it very freeing that there's no hierarchy or ladder of prayer for Ignatius. Prayer is simply prayer. God adapts to me, and God chooses a style, the subject matter for prayer that is best for me at that particular time, through the experience of consolation and desolation. When I taught high school, I prayed differently on days when I taught 5 classes of sophomore theology than on a weekend or holiday, or when on retreat or on vacation, or when sick when my energy and my attention span may be diminished. God adapts to what I need on that day, and so I cannot compare prayer experiences, as if my contemplative prayer yesterday was more advanced than today's prayer, which is primarily with petitions, because God chooses the style of prayer that is best for me on that particular day. In troubled times, we are called to be faithful to God in prayer. All of us, through our grace history and rich spiritual heritage that we have inherited, could relate our life stories through our experiences and growth in prayer. My vocation as a religious was discovered and discerned through learning how to pray. And my growth in prayer paralleled growth in noticing emotions and movements of the heart, and growth of the affect in general. In my life now, I'm very privileged to observe and help people with their prayer, to help people notice God's activity in their lives, as I call myself a privileged observer. Being prayerful is one of the strategies in which Jesus is calling us to respond to our troubled times. Let's ask ourselves, do I foster prayer in my own life, in the lives of others? How am I called to be a person of prayer? How am I called to witness to prayer? In conclusion of our series on these Last Supper discourse, we should not be surprised by troubled times and struggles in our lives and our world. In John 16:33, Jesus warns, "Each of you will be scattered." In John 16:20, Jesus also warns, "They will expel you from synagogues and kill you." Troubles will come to each person and community in different ways, in varied ages and context. Yet by the timeless example and words of John chapters 13 to 17, Jesus has given us a program to approach troubled times and how to share in his victory. May these reflections and the use of John's Gospel enrich your Lent and also the period of Easter and Pentecost, when we hear the Last Supper discourse so often in our Sunday and daily readings when we celebrate the Eucharist. May these reflections also strengthen you during these troubled times of the current pandemic. Thank you very much.